The southern Lebanese-Israeli border is a flashpoint, with the airstrikes killing a Lebanese soldier and injuring 18, escalating a crisis marked by over 3,500 deaths and massive displacements. And that the COP29 divides in global climate action deepens as wealthy nations face backlash over inadequate climate commitments. Moving on to Ukraine, where Russia's use of advanced weapons raises alarms, with Zelensky calling it a dangerous testing ground for global security. How will these events shape our world? Let's start with the escalation in southern Lebanon. Welcome to In Focus.
It gives me great pleasure to declare open the 29th session of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
COP29 must tear down the walls of climate finance.
Qnews has reported that the United States believes Israel and Hezbollah are nearing a ceasefire deal to end over a year of conflict that has killed 3,500 in Lebanon and displaced hundreds of thousands. The proposed agreement includes an Israeli withdrawal, Lebanese army deployment near the border, and a United States-led oversight committee. Although the talks are promising, final approval hinges on Israel's Security Cabinet meeting. Israeli media has reported that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has given preliminary approval to a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon, with a deal reportedly imminent. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz met with U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Middle Eastern Affairs Dan Shapiro to discuss efforts to secure the ceasefire. Israeli media speculates that an agreement could be reached this week, though disagreements remain over implementation mechanisms and Hezbollah's positions. Israeli sources have revealed that the Israeli Minister of National Security opposes a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon. He stated that such an agreement would be a significant mistake, arguing that it would squander a historic opportunity to eliminate Hezbollah, according to his remarks.
צריכים לקבוע שהומניטרי רק תמורת הומניטרי ולשלוט במקום הזה, במקום הכי חשוב. מדינות שהכירו היום במדינה פלסטינית נותנים פרס לנוח'בות, לרוצחים, למתעללים, ואני אומר, אנחנו לא נאפשר אפילו הצהרה על מדינה פלסטינית, אפילו הצהרה על הקמת מדינה כזאת חס ושלום. אני אומר דבר נוסף, שכדי להשמיד את החמאס.
The Guardian's recent headline, where COP29 failed and the limited reasons for hope, captures the frustration for many feel about the outcomes of the summit in Baku. Despite extended negotiations, the deal fell far short of the climate finance needed, with just $300 billion in direct commitments compared to the $1.3 trillion proposed goal by 2035. Developing nations have labeled this figure as inadequate, describing it as a joke, and the focus now shifts to whether future summits can deliver meaningful action. The question remains, are these efforts enough to prevent the devastating consequences of unchecked climate change, or are we simply delaying the inevitable? And for more analysis and an in-depth looks on the outcomes and their implications, we welcome Dr. Adel Salmi, Senior Researcher at the French Institute for Environmental and Agricultural Research in Paris. A very good day, sir, and a very warm welcome on our show. Dr. Salmi, the criticism of the COP29 has been intense, especially regarding financial commitments. Why do you think developed nations have fallen short in meeting these expectations?
I think in my expectation that this summit actually was technical summit, which means that it was not a decisive summit in order to decide in these important files. And that's for many reasons. The first reason that this summit is happening in a very difficult climate for the United Nations, because there is a war in Europe and there's a war in the Middle East, and also there are different civil wars in the region, and the United Nations is unable to be a mediator and to stop all these crises. The other reason is the American election, that we are waiting the major powers to decide if America will withdraw from the environment and climate conventions, or they will continue support and will finance and contribute the environment work. This is aside. The third reason that the coming summit that will be held in Brazil, and because the Amazon River and because of the symbolism of Brazil, as the majority of international agreements came from them. In my expectations, all the states are keeping their attempts and their formation to give these important announcements in the coming years. So the announcement that was given this year is the limits or the minimum because of the estimations. Speaking about the compensation that needs more than $1,000 billion, some of the developing states are asked for the half. Africa, the estimations referring that they need not at least $400 billion, and also in Asia. To have this international commitment to for $300 billion, it is the minimum. And we think this is an important step, but it's still a limited step, taking into consideration that we are in the COP29. It is the 29th summit, and these summits are now somehow complementary. And we remember only 4 or 5 summits where important decisions were taken, but the other summits somehow complementary or preparatory. So in the track of the environment work that led by the United Nations, yes, it is developing, but somehow very slow steps are taken in this track of improvements. Yes, they are not enough, but this is a current track. The international process and in facing these challenges.
Okay, sir, how can developing nations leverage local solutions like decentralized energy systems and sustainable agriculture to address their environmental challenges, sir?
Very important questions because developing countries need to build its own policies, and it's important to have these international and local agreements and national agreements, and then move to the regional agreements in order to build its policies in the sustainable in agriculture, and for the energy transformation, and to reduce the estimations, and to have a new diplomatic strategy globally in order to enable the cooperation. It's not only a financing problem, it's also how they could involve it in these technological fields in many of these issues, how they can have the frame and enabled by the needed manpower to implement these new policies. So we need to have these policies, then start having pressures regionally and globally in order to benefit from all the international capabilities.
Perfect, sir.
Yes,
How,
Hassan.
what role should international organizations play in ensuring equitable access to climate finance for developing countries?
Of financing the adequate and it's an important, essential issue that was recommended before in different summits, in the Emirates Summit and also in Sharm el-Sheikh Summit. But right now, we are talking about this fund, that it's a part of the aid will be in a form of loans. And so, taking loans in order to invest in the digital transformation and the energy transformation that in need from those states in order to solidarity and to have these strategies, to have pressures and to get the needed experience from the developed states in order to have a fair distribution for these funds.
Sir, do you see any viable pathways for rebuilding trust again between the global north and south in future climate negotiations?
Unfortunately, the trust, I can say that the trust is removed and dismantled, but not being granted. We are in a system or order in the north states and in the southern states. In the north states, they having their own economic problems, and the only solution, if we didn't have a practical solutions to have a specific taxes on the polluting states, if we didn't have a fixed resource for financing in order to face these challenges of climate changes, if we didn't have a specific fixed resources, I think this trust will not be gained, especially that we are in a
Sir,
system.
how can we implement what you're asking for, or how can we implement all the recommendations that you're asking for now in light of what happened in this climate change, of course, summit, which just took place at Baku and ended today, with all developing countries, unfortunately, very disappointed and seeing that they were all slapped?
The track of development with the developing states, I believe that the climate change is a chance for the developing countries in order to have these improvements and reforms in their economic systems and in their policies, and also to participate all the parties, the citizens and private sectors and all the institutions in order to have this strategy of cooperations. Right now we can see many alliances and alliances that are emerging in the Middle East. These regional alliances to face and these challenges and cooperate in order to solve the climate issues, including the issues of exchange of experience.
Sir,
and
I'm going to leave it
coordinate.
here because I'm running out of time. Thank you very much, sir, Dr. Salmi, for your shedding light on the challenges and opportunities in addressing global climate justice. Next, we explore the evolving conflicts in Eastern Europe and the reported use of advanced weaponry, which continues to shape the dynamics on the ground. Politico has reported the capture of British national James Scott Anderson by Russian forces in Kursk. Anderson, a former British Army soldier, was reportedly fighting with Ukraine's International Legion. Foreign Secretary David Dallamy has addressed the case, with the United Kingdom's government pledging support for Anderson's family. This development raises questions about the role of foreign nationals in the ongoing conflict and its broader implications for regional stability. Joining us to discuss this development is Paolo Mori, a military analyst based in Rome. A very good day, sir, and a warm welcome to the show. Mr. Mori, foreign fighters and, of course, mercenaries have been heavily involved in the Ukraine war since it began. Can you describe their impact on battlefield dynamics, please?
Evening, first of all.
It's our pleasure to have you with us on the show, sir.
It's nothing new, as already told. Foreign fighters are in a foreign legion fighting for Ukraine forces, and on the other side, as we know, we have North Korean soldiers fighting more for the Russian side. So political implications aren't different from what we saw in these 2 years. These soldiers aren't officially in the NATO army. They are former soldiers, and so as a private citizen, they can do whatever they want to do. I'm talking about the political, in Russia and NATO. Clearly, we don't know exactly how many foreign fighters are fighting, and as far as we know, we don't even know if there are some kind of military contractors from some kind of private agency fighting for. It's very hard to know the further implications. This kind of utilization of foreign soldiers and even mercenaries.
Sir, the capture of a former British soldier, the question of whether NATO governments, including Britain, are in any way involved in sending volunteers to fight for Ukraine. How do you assess this concern, sir?
Well, changing the side. As far as I remember, there was an American citizen fighting for Ukraine, for Russia. There was captured and maybe killed. So I don't think that it's gonna be a big deal for the UK and not a big deal for Russia. Maybe if the Kremlin wants to push up the tension, and he can ask for a kind of exchange with the UK government. But as already mentioned, we're talking about private citizens, so they're not fighting for the UK. They're not fighting for the other country. They are supporting Ukraine.
Okay, sir, Russia testing advanced weapons in Ukraine are alarming. How did this strategy affect the broader dynamics of the conflict?
Well, yeah, clearly in every conflict, it's a ground bed to test new weapons. Last week we just saw the launch of MRBM. That stands for medium range ballistic missile. It's all new because it's a weapon that Russia already developed in until 2018 when it stopped due to lack of funding. And now we see that this new missile strike Dnipropetrovsk in a kind of test. So this is the main habit for every kind of conflict and for every side of the conflicts. From the Russian side, we saw the testing in a combat situation of the Sukhoi Su-57. That's the fifth generation fighter of the aviation of Russia.
Sir, because I have to wrap up the program now. How do you assess the situation between Ukraine and Russia at this point as everything is escalating?
Well, I think that situation is gonna put both sides in a difficult way, not because of the escalating, but because we are both sides are waiting to see what kind of policy the US will have in the next month. And we know
So
that
it all depends on the United States, sir.
yeah, clearly. I think that the US support to Ukraine will continue, but it's gonna be more on European shoulders. And I think that for question, Russia will push over all over the front line. And
Okay, Mr. Paolo Maui, of course, I wanted to discuss more. It's a very important topic on now, but of course I'm running out of time, unfortunately. Thank you very much for your informative knowledge and for your, of course, analysis and insights. That wraps up our episode for today for In Focus. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.